with our monthly offerings. What we did was we responded to Mary Moorhead's September 2025 statement that said Virgin Islands history is not being taught in the classroom. What we did was investigate, and Shalana Brown helped us. She is the Cultural Education Director. There's Shalana. And she identified public school teachers who had utilized Virgin Islands materials and whose student projects had reflected mastery of the subject with the rigor of Common Core state standards. Teachers had led students to do video projects in the field. They did their own research, they did their own storyboards, they gave their own speeches about climate control and environmental inquiry. Other teachers had students involved in mapping with GPS to locate historical spaces. Shalana herself is working with students on background information of quadrille dance, which involves research and ensures the students understand the nuances of why quadrilles have been ingrained in our country. Additionally, the Territorial Social Studies Coordinator, Dr. Larson, described and explained his vision for a new civics textbook that will be utilized in the high schools. The publisher allowed the VI Department of Education to modify their content with Virgin Islands history. So our inquiry into the classrooms of VI yielded updated insight into the teaching of VI history. SVIH can rightfully say that we got a glimpse of the answers to the 2025 challenge. We have come full circle. We hope that you will find this session on traditional woodworking enlightening. We hope that you will join our society, and Naima's at the desk will take your dues and your application film. We hope that you will become a member. Thank you. I want to introduce Vivian Fludd. Vivian Ebbeson Fludd is the head of the Ebbeson family, who took the leadership in rebuilding and rehabilitating the property at 5 Hill Street, Christiansted, on the corner of East Street. The property is in the Frandell area of town. She says that 5 Hill Street, quote, is deeply rooted in the heartfelt and resonating wishes and instructions given to her by her late father. I present to you Vivian.
Good morning. I am truly honored, humbled, and blessed to have this opportunity to sit in a room of individuals who knows me from whence I came, and those that know me at different points upon this life journey. And to come here this morning and share with you a project that when you start something, you don't realize how much you invest in it until you start sitting down and writing things down. So this morning I'm here to tell you about the 5 Hill Street rehabilitation. I'm here to tell you about the woodworking pieces that came into it, the challenges, and to just share information on this experience. And to say that I proudly do that because the preservation and the showcasing of what we are so truly blessed with as a community, as a people, is dynamic. And when we interpret it, then we begin to see the rationale. So hopefully this morning, in my brief presentation, there's a lot of pictures to share with you, and I hope the question and answers I'll be able to answer, provide answers to the questions you have. So with everything, there's an agenda, and it looks long, but it's going to move quickly. So family history, the descendants, our property history, the rehabilitation project, question and answers, tips and takeaways, and the wrap-up. So as introduced, I'm the 3rd offspring of George Augustus Ebbeson, a Hillsider, and Enid Maria Ebbeson, Hanson Ebbeson, a Gallisberian. A 4th-generation owner of the Ebbeson family, who along with her older siblings, I have a sister named Violet and a brother named Vincent, I am the last child, have been on a 21-year journey to preserve and restore number 5 Hill Street, located in the historic Frandell area of Christiansted, St. Croix,
which has been in the Ebbeson family for the last 125 years. I know individuals in this room who have pictures of that property as cherished pictures, and there's a number, and you'll see some of them in here. This is a sketch that was done for our family by Mr. Ignacio Mandijanos, and I was blessed for him to doing that for us. A lot of memories shared there. So I'm just going to show you. This is a famous picture by Mr. Stephen Larson that is one of his collections of the property as well. And you know, you get individuals like, I've seen that house. I'm like, you did? And walked in, and I'm like, and so he's telling me the history and the beauty of this house and the shutters and the, you know, what he's intrigued with. And I'm going, do you know the owners? He says, no. I said, well, I'm one of them. And we struck up a fast friendship from there. The motivation. How did I get here? And I did not honestly tell you that I realized it was 21 years until I looked at the first application to begin to restore and preserve this building. I was shocked. Had I thought I had invested 21 years in trying to get this done, it probably seemed like, you know, pass that on to someone else. So we were doing a property cleanup, and it came from the heartfelt and resonating wishes and instructions of my late father, George Augustus Ebbeson. Some people know him as Mr. Ebbeson, some people know him as Evie. A very good family friend, Mr. Mark Biggs, when he did his eulogy at his funeral, says, tell me, who do you know that has 51 nicknames? And when we went through, and then you had folks after the service telling you, well, you missed this one, you missed that one. But if I would go and tell him, you know, through the window, say hello, he's like, oh yeah, okay. You know, and he knew all of those nicknames, and an only child at that. Everyone thought he had a lot of siblings. He was an only child. And we were cleaning up the initial phases of the property some 25 plus years ago. And I can clearly remember him sitting in the middle of Hill Street. We blocked off the street. We had the bins and we had everything out. And he says, I want Ayo to do me a favor. Get this property repaired, because I don't ever want Ayo to pass this place and say, you used to own that. That has been my motivation and driving force in what you will see come forward. That was his instructions. I don't know if he knew that it was, but he gave his directive. He still passed on in 2014, but his directive stands. And I will say what is sentimental. Two things. Coming down here this morning, and I had texted Betsy and said, is it still on? Because it was pouring in Christiansted. And at the back of my dad's booklet, we put a poem that said, look for me in rainbows. And as I'm coming down, there was a big, beautiful rainbow. Oh. And so I hope the taxi man in the bus next to me didn't think I was losing it. Because I'm like, Daddy, I'm going to tell the story. This morning we get to tell the story. And so, look for me in rainbows. Shalana? So our family history, because I don't think I can tell you about the property without telling you some of the history of the individuals who are there. So I'm Vivian Ebbeson Fludd, and growing up, like I said, I have two siblings, Violet and Vincent. When I was in, I think, kindergarten, and I looked at some paperwork, I found some stuff that my mother had tucked away the other day. And I used to say, I am Vivian Ilma Ebbeson Jr. My mother said, there's no juniors. There's no female juniors. But I knew I was junior. So I am the daughter of George Augustus. His mom's name is Vivian Ilma Ebbeson. Her parents' name is George Christopher Ebbeson and Alexandrine Burt Ebbeson. His father is George Balthazar Ebbeson, and George's father is William Ebbeson. Hence why my brother's name went 3 V's, Vincent, Vivian, and Violet. That's a family tradition. However, my father said, and we understood why my brother was not a junior. He said there's enough Georges. There's George Balthazar, George Christopher, George Leopold, George Augustus. So you'll be Vincent. This is them. This is from whence I came. George Christopher, Alexandrine. This is my grandmother Vivian. That is her sister Eugenie. Her aunt, her other sister Marielle, her youngest sister Maud, and her brother George Leopold. Descendant Edison, our flow chart. So where do we begin? And this is when the energies, good, bad, and in between, rallying the family. And I had some of the individuals, as we stuck onto this project, said to me, so who are the owners? And that was a question that stopped and go, who are really the owners? Who's still alive? Whose properties have not been probated? Who have children who've passed on? Who has it was just like, but it was the easiest way to tell the story. And it was one document that took a lot of time, but anywhere I sit and any project that I pursue related to this building, that document is so important. And I will tell anyone that's starting on a renovation journey, it's key. Put it on paper. Because when you sit, individuals see your story and what you're dealing with. And hence we ended up with 35 owners. You can go to this. From two little individuals, Marielle, her sisters. Marielle then got the property by a deed of gift. She then deed of gifted it to her niece, nephews, great niece and great nephews, and the spread out begins. But this document showed us who they initially required me to research the deeds, to get the property information, but it also told me who did we need to speak to and what wasn't clear. And so we ended up with the fact that to go ahead moving forward with the property and deal with the issues in regards to ownership, that we knew that we had 9 probates to be done. We knew that we had 35 owners. And you know you're always going to get a feisty relative that thinks they've never played a part, but the minute anything begins, they have lots of ownership. And so I got down to who owns 1/35 of a share, who owns 1/35 of 1/7 of a share, who owns 1/96 of a seventh of a share. And so this, I will encourage anyone, once they put it together, this tells such a story. So the property history, number 5 Hill Street. We've been dated it back, and I can give thanks to Mr. George Tyson, who has worked honestly with me to get this done. That we found that the property was listed in 1772 in the tax and title records. So that's 254 years ago. In 1797, it was rented to free colors, 229 years ago. In 1803, and we're trying to date when that structure said power off. You guys can still hear me? Okay. In 1803, it was identified that it was one house and it had 2 stories. And the structure that's there today, you'll see it as we go along. In 1942, it was gifted to Marielle Ebbeson by her aunts. That was 84 years ago. In 1969, it was deeded gifted by Marielle to her nieces, nephews, great niece, great nephew, with life inheritance to herself, her 2 sisters, which was Eugenie Ebbeson Barbell. And what's interesting is that's the same Babel family that on St. Croix we pronounce Babel, on St. Thomas we pronounce it Barbell. Same group of individuals. I don't know who got upset with whom and who dropped an R, but they're the same individuals. Maud Lenore Ebbeson, and her 3rd sister, which was my grandmother, Vivian Ebbeson, who passed away in 1957. So that's 57 years. And so that's the history on the ownership that we have been able to date back thus far. I think for me, it was like, you know, you grew up in a place, and, you grew up in a place, and you know that you go there. You know you run up the steps. You know that no Frandell knows the property. I'm sure Congresswoman Christensen knows the property as well. I know Jerry knows the property. And I'm sure when you see it, you guys will say, that's the property, I know that. But you grow up there, and you don't realize the history. You just take it for granted. You just know what you know, and that's what it exists as. Next. The rehabilitation project, 21 years of efforts. Where does time go? And this started in 2004 when I was working with St. Croix Foundation on the famous Paint and Scrape project, and said, how can we, and I'm quick to volunteer and say, use us as a guinea pig. If whatever we do can help someone else, we are sure happy to help. And so that project, when I was putting together the next step to do with the renovations that we had now, I'm like, you know what, we did that in when year did we do that? And when I pulled out the application and saw that it was 2004, that's when I realized 21 years had been invested. What we tried to do was be very creative, and we were trying at the time to use it like as a Bob Vila project. And we didn't have a Home Depot then, but we had a Caribe. But the issue was it wasn't a national chain, because we were trying to get it repaired because of its historical significance, the fact that we could identify that free colored slaves lived there, that it was in the Free Ghut area, that we could, and they were all gone home. The issue was the publicity and the chain. You know, it's like when they roll up to your house and we're going to fix that house and move that bus and there's something new behind. That was the intent. But because we did not have a national chain, we were not approved. So 21 years, the before, and some of you may have seen this. So this is the home on Hill Street and Queen Cross in Christiansted. And this was after Hurricane Hugo. And I want you to look at the story that the structure has been telling us. Still in pretty good shape. It don't look good, but it's in good shape. It's standing. After Hurricane Irma and Maria. And you can see that the house is basically saying to you, I can't do this anymore. I can't stand anymore. I can't, I weathered every storm here, 1928 forward, but I'm getting tired. Go ahead. And it's interesting because you see me give credit to who we got the photographs from, because all of a sudden you're like, wait, that's my house. That's our house on there. And this young man, we have a story because I contacted him about getting a picture. And he said to me, you could take it just like I did. I said, excuse me? I said, no, you can't be rude and be sassy, And so now we're very good friends because he came and someone sent him to meet me. And I said, you're the guy that had all the lip. Beautiful, it's a beautiful black and white picture. This is from the side street, actually going up Hill Street. If you notice, the property has 3 stories. There's a bottom floor, there's a middle layer, and then there's a top floor. I can show that. Irma Maria again. If you notice, we had to kind of bear up. This is the entrance to the gallery right there. But again, this was the first time that you notice the portion of the gallery here is missing. We had boarded up the house a number of years ago. And Mr. Benitez came through and he said to me, we had it sealed in tight. And he said, you need to take some of that board off of that house. And we're like, why? With preventing people from going in. He says, that building is pitch point. The wood has oil in it. And the heat, it will self-ignite if you don't let the building breathe. He says you're causing your own fire. The potential is there. Because of the oil in the wood, the heat, the enclosure, it's a perfect setting. So we took off some of the board. But if you notice, like I said, after Irma Maria, this side piece, the piece to the gallery, was gone. And I said to my family, I said, this house is saying, help me, or you're going to have a bigger problem.
7 minutes.
Okay, so keep going. Again, same picture as the front view of the house. The side view of the house. The back that goes into the yard. This is the back portion at the bottom. This is the gallery that I wanted to share. We did the whole gingerbread trimming that's there. That is the underneath work. Go ahead. The paneling, if you notice, the gallery was all paneled in, and we're still trying to figure out why that was done, how that was done, because it doesn't match the era of the house, but that was done. Again, the gallery and the shutters. The side, if you notice the deterioration, the keep out sign, that didn't matter to anyone because they moved in, and rooms and everything that was there. Keep going. How we had to kind of board up the entrance to the home. Again, this is the back of the house. The back shutters, was the dining room area. I knew that when I was growing up, It was a dining room. Obviously, it was like a foyer that looked out into the yard, but they made it into a bedroom. Next one. Keep going. This is a little cottage that's on the side, and that was the state of the cottage. We grew up in here. This was my great aunt's, where she stayed. Very territorial. We were her grandchildren. And so you could go in the big house for a little while and you got to come back. You know, sharing. You ain't sharing children. And so, with all of that, and all of the efforts, this is the after. We realized that the property had some unique features. Its lot size and layout. It's a 55-50 lot in the free gut area, was a lot bigger size than lots were allotted. The structure and size of the layout, clearly we knew, and when we dated back, we knew that the controllers lived there. Seems like it played a part where a lot of government officials resided there, just by the height of the structure. The layout upstairs has 4 bedrooms, 1 bathroom. The second floor has a kitchen, there's a connect, and then there's a kind of like a commercial space on the bottom. The property occupancy and use, the lap board thickness and grooving as the construction began, and we had all of this, that we would only have to take off and replace some of the lap boards when we realized that the thickness of the lap boards that was on and what we were putting on were a lot thinner. So it then changed the whole project, because what we thought we could mix and match, they weren't mixing and matching. So we literally ended up rebuilding the home, and we thank the contractor for that. The entrance and room accommodations, the actual entrance where you see the gallery clearly was added on to the home after the initial entrance, and I know that there's a big renaming project about properties downtown, but I had been taught that the entrance to the home determines the address of the property. So we're changing addresses downtown. For example, we have a business, everybody knows it, Ebby Store. Our address, although our doors open on Company Street, our address is King Cross Street, because the address for the Pedersen home is King Cross Street. So Hill Street, the address is, although the gallery is on Queen Cross Street, Hill Street is the address because the original entrance for the home was on Hill Street. They enclosed that and they made it into a bedroom. This is, bless my good friend who has left us but has left an impact. If you notice, we got as close to the gingerbread as that pattern that was there. We were blessed. That's actually fiberglass because we couldn't find wood. But we changed the look of the gallery. We changed it to the balusters. And Gerville Larson gave his input. And for several reasons, he said. First, for aesthetics. First, for commonality, aeration, and most biggest part, we could see if anybody was living on the gallery. You had people who moved in and had their lights up. Again, this is what it looks like now, the front view. Keep going, Shalana. The side view coming down King Cross Street. If you notice, the cottage is completely rebuilt. And the red, I was hemming and hawing about the red shutters, but they really make a statement. Keep going. And if you notice, my presentation backdrop kind of matches the colors of the house. This is the side of the home that you saw before with the door, with all the hinges. We asked them as much to save old hinges and use old artifacts, and which they did. Those that they couldn't, we had to replace. Keep going. This is the back. Remember that place with all the holes? That's it now. This is what I was telling you was the entrance to the building initially. We found a door, and I had to identify with my brother's writing that he had written on as a child. So he has that door in the process. Keep going. Again, from the side. You notice this is a cistern back here, and we're thinking that this property was one lot. There's a property next to us that's currently owned by Attorney Diane Russell. We used to call it Grant property. But if you look at it, they talked about the property having cottages and rooms that were rented. So we're thinking it probably was originally one lot all the way up. Keep going. This is the cottage on the side. And the steps, I spent many afternoons on that step getting in trouble, waiting for my mom to come. Keep going. So the challenges. Of course, our challenge was funding opportunities, which is everyone's challenge. Skilled project management, skilled and master craftsmen, supplies and resources, and of course our vagrant persons. That is a challenge. We got this project done through an awesome partnership, creativity, and just walking in and saying, listen, throw myself on the mercy of the court. I need your help. use us as a poster child. Let us help someone else. The mess that we have, help us go through so that can help someone else. And so we were able to use the Economic Development Authority, Enterprise Zone Commission, Ms. Nadine Machena Ken as the managing director, Wayne Scott as the specialist, and Tyreek. And we partnered. We had leveraged dollars through hurricane disaster funds for Irma Maria. That was a 2-year process. But we weren't project managers. And even if we hired a contractor to sit and ask the contractor and tell him what to do, that was not our expertise. EDA, EZA did that for us. They served. So they knew when a half-inch round spouting needed to be here, what needed to be removed. And so that communication occurred with us. So they were our partners. Next. I can't speak enough because I'm truly blessed. And I told them, I said, I have to share your name because the contractor on that project was Rudy O'Reilly Plumbing and Construction. And they were not doing any more projects. And he signed on to this project. He was working with EDA, but he signed on to the project because he says, I grew up in the house. I know Miss Maud and Miss Marielle. So it was personal. So we had somebody that was in there who knew what it looked like, what it was, and who had memories as well. He's the president and owner. Tony Lorenzen is the owner-manager. Boss, Mr. Walton Rocky Mackay. Truly, what you see there, reconstructed, grooved, done everything, is him. And what was dynamic about him is, you know, you have lofty ideas. He's like, that can't work, you know. I'm like, it can't work. Even though when we got down to colors, he's like, that ain't making no statement, you know. But gave you your input, told you were the owner, but gave you the true guidance. And Mr. Lionel Escobar, who was his contractor. They are his carpenter. Right now, they are renovating the property at Sean Canegata's property on Strand Street. They're redoing that property as well. But I could not get it done without these individuals with some very frank discussions and realities. And keeping me a step away when we found that the entrance that we thought was the entrance wasn't the entrance, and there were some other changes to the house. As I look to wrap up, as my time runs out, go ahead, Sean. So continue the next steps, of course, is exterior maintenance, which we have to keep up. The funding opportunities, research and pursuit for the interior renovations to the home. Adherence to, of course, the SHPO guidelines. And, you know, some people don't have good experiences with SHPO. I can't complain, because I think when you walk in and you say, tell me what you need to do, because I don't know what I'm doing. And it just kind of flows, because they truly want to help. Use determination. The use determination, how we're going to use the property, and then the vegetation removal, of course, to keep that upkeep in the neighborhood. Next. Question and answers. Up. I hope I can answer this question. Go ahead.
So what are you considering for use?
I think that we thought about it being residential, but then we thought for the property to play its role in the neighborhood and to really bring attraction and energies and activity to the neighborhood, it's more than likely going to be a mixed-use commercial property. Because what we want, if you have somebody living there, they come and they go. But when you have a commercial property, a lot of people come and go. So you get individuals back to the Free Ghut area. You get that revitalization downtown. You get the economic, you know, trend. And so that is the consideration right now. That's the family discussion that's going on. But more than likely, it's going to be some mixed-use commercial property.
That's absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
Start by saying that it's so good to see a descendant of the family still involved in that project. Absolutely.
Thank you. I'm humbled.
At the beginning of your presentation, you talked about identifying 35 different owners.
Yes.
And I was thinking that I am American of African descent.
Okay.
But I've seen so many, I've been in the movie for years. I've seen so many similarities between the culture of African descendants in the United States and African descendants in the Caribbean. And one of them is, at least in a certain socioeconomic bracket, a lack of estate planning. All right, and that might be because historically we were not great property owners. I'm not really sure. But I just wanted to ask you, how difficult was it to deal with 35 different owners and died of intestate, and I've just seen that over and over again. And I also have a personal question.
Sure.
Which you can choose to answer.
Okay.
Are there any younger members of your family here on St. Croix who will carry this on?
Well, let me answer the last question first. So, you know, there's always, that's the same question you had? That one? Okay, okay. So, to answer the last question first, it has been, because I think it was instilled in our dad that this issue of pride, my father would always say something to us as well. He says, you know, don't ever think that dirt don't have value. You know, we walk around here thinking dirt doesn't have value. Dirt has value. And so that, because it's his wish, but my great niece and nephews, because there's a nephew and one niece, and you know when you see a personality of someone like yourself, that's my niece. That's the person who's interested. Her brothers are going to go along, and so she's already been dubbed, you're next. Here's the folder. You know, she's, you know, the history and that portion, so that we've done that. But we've had a conversation with them saying, this isn't even about you guys. We have 2 great nephews, 3 great nephews, and 1 great niece. It's about them. It's about that legacy. It's the fact that you need to be proud of who you are. Everyone, there's mistakes, but the fact if you had this property, and what drove me, in addition to my dad's statement, was the fact that in 1940s, 1920s, 1930s, you had 4 single women who were born in St. Croix, went to St. Thomas, came back to St. Croix, you know, in a very matriarchal society, owned this property. I can't just get up and say, okay, I don't want it. Actually, the efforts that was put in for them to be owners is what's prideful as well. In regards to probate, what we did is we identified, because we didn't even know what we were dealing with until we identified who had a will, who didn't have a will, whose family members are willing to remove themselves, who has paid taxes all these years, who's not had an interest, and then had one-on-one conversations with them. And so we're saying that whatever generation money this party generates, we know that probate cost is the first step in individuals not being involved. And we're like, listen, we're willing to help you get along that way. But some of them just don't want to be involved. We had one family member, when we called her and talked about renovating, she said, well, I don't know why it just doesn't blow down. I said, no problem. The first name on the tax paper is yours. So when it blow down, they're calling you. I'm in the unorder. She's like, oh, tell me what I need to do. She's like, you can have my share. I'm like, thank you. So it's just being, you know, realistic. And the probate laws is prohibitive. It is very prohibitive. The probate law is it's a very tough process. And I think in looking at the glass half full and not half empty, the reality is we can say that things have changed. We've gone from wills to trust to estate planning. When we think about our ancestors back then, they were about securing a property. They weren't thinking about dying. They weren't thinking about it would belong to 10 other people. That's the issue we're facing now. You know, even as you put a trust in place, you know, once that person, you know, the trustee passes and you become a successor trustee, it just doesn't overnight. I see Jerry can relate. Well, it doesn't happen overnight. There's things you have to do to make that trust a living trust. So it's not you as a successor want to be in charge. It's a lot of work, you know, but it's the reality at the time. And I think having the conversation with the family, saying this is what we're facing, this is how we're moving forward, and coming with a plan. Because some going to come along, and some going to get, we still on tape? Dragged along.
Just to say that there's a hearing on the 29th of this month,
Okay.
next week.
Okay.
On all of
This.
probate and also restoration.
Okay, great. So on the 29th? Legislature? Oh, okay. The legislature?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's Maurice James's.
Oh, okay.
You should reach out.
Yeah. Because I think that it is about, the challenge I see is true property management is not about sale of your property. It's about how do you keep your property. How do you tell this story? How do you say, I can help you? Have you done this layout? Have you done a family flow? That's what individuals are challenged with. It's not the lack of individuals who want to keep and maintain their property. It's the fact of what resources, and to understand that 21 years in 21 days, you know what I mean? But the issue is to be determined to get it done. and get it done. But the reality is that it's challenging. It's challenging. You know, I would go to that corner every afternoon when I leave my business, get to that corner and say, God, give me a way to fix this place. Give me a way. Just give me a way, because I know what I wanted to achieve.
What year or how recently has it been in this nice condition?
It actually was finished in September of 2025. So you're seeing really recent. And I have a contractor saying, listen, don't let a place deteriorate, you know. It was like, okay.
So do you have
2025.
any businesses that are interested in moving in?
You know, we have individuals who want to purchase. So we have individuals who want to purchase. We said they ain't for sale.
No.
Not an option.
To have them to rent.
Yes,
space for
yes,
business.
yes,
Any
yes,
takers?
yes. We've been approached, so we're blessed in that regard.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Betsy?
What do the neighbors say about the finished project?
They are elated. I must say I'm blessed. They are truly elated. One neighbor keeps me an update. He says, you know, we need to put a charge for photos and a photo booth. So, because I sat and I watched so many, they tolerated, because the contractor started to work at 6 in the morning, 5:36. They tolerated. They were happy to see it upkeep. You had those individuals who were interested in purchase, ain't too happy, because now clearly it's repaired. And so it's like, okay, well, they're installing that, you know. But we felt that the neighborhood, our next door neighbor, Attorney Russell, when I said to her initially we're going to be starting the renovations, she's like, okay, yeah, let me know. The morning they were going to start, I called her and said, hey, they're starting this morning. She said, they've started? Yeah, you know. So they have been supportive. I truly, truly have been blessed. And everybody has an eye out now. Any more questions? Sir.
When did the family, your family, move out of the house? And
The last time we were in that property had to be just prior to Hugo.
oh, okay.
Yeah, just prior to Hugo. Yeah, up until that time we would, you know, individuals would finish, persons would stay there. Go ahead. So, my final tips and takeaways. Stay driven and committed. Stay focused and motivated. Be creative. Don't think that something doesn't apply to you. Ask the question. Figure it out beforehand how what they do can help you. You know, it's sort of like you sit at the table and you said, okay, what can you do for me? And then they say, and then I said, well, I need you. If you do this, 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 and this, then we could get this done. Because sometimes the idea isn't there. When I reached out to Enterprise Zone, it was, I don't have a project manager. I'm not skilled in this area. They did. But if I didn't ask the question, that partnership would have never developed. Be patient and prayerful. It can be done. Trust me, I am living proof. It can be done. My hair ain't get this color because of the house. This is just genetics. That's Shalana? Go ahead. And I just want to say thank you. Hopefully what I shared this morning is helpful. This is a spark. I'm surely willing to help and share whatever opinions, ideas. I'm working with another person in the department who is trying to get done and having to deal with SHPO, and I'm like, there's certain words you just don't say. You don't sell SHPO, you're going to demolish. That is not a word that gets you close. And Betsy will have my information. Susan will have my information. I want to thank you. I want to thank you for all the well wishes and all of the encouragement that I have gotten when that property was done. And the fact that, and I will end on the prideful note, that we started this project on my father's birthday. The first board was removed on his birthday. And what brought tears to my eyes was when they put up the permit. And the permit says property owner Ebbeson. I was boohooing and the contractor saying, well, what did we do wrong? I said, nothing, it's just up there. And so it is a dream and you will continue to see it. And I thank you for this opportunity to share. The woodworkers, there was a grooving. You heard me talk about the grooving. So in the lap boards, there were two different grooves. And
Yes.
Director Krieger came and said, this house was erected in two different times because the grooves are different. So the front lap boards and the back lap boards were different. So it's still a lot more to kind of identify and drill. But thank you, Betsy, thank you for the fact of embracing the fact that it is truly a hallmark in the community, and I am truly blessed and proud to forever be at Edison. I got Flood on the end, but that's why it's Ebbeson Fludd. Truly, truly proud. Frandell, thank you for the welcome, and each of you, thank you for what you do to preserving and showcasing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you. Thank you.
That's it. That's it. There's a plug on the bottom, on the floor, and you just have to pull it over and plug it in.
Prosperity and community pride.
Here, I'll talk and.
All right.
Good morning, everyone. I'm just trying to figure out where my stuff is. Thank you all for being here. It is indeed a pleasure to have everyone here. I'm going to find what I'm looking for, maybe. Okay. I thought I left it open. I did. CHANT has been privileged to be involved in historic preservation since 2016 or so. I have a lot of different PowerPoint, but I think this kind of encapsulates what happens when folks come together. In 2016, Monica Marin came to me and said, oh, we have to apply for a grant. And that grant was for creative placemaking, which is now called creative placekeeping by most. And at that point, she was the chair of the Caribbean Museum Center for the Arts. And we did an application, and surprisingly, including very high-ranking art executives who helped us with the grant, shocked that we got the grant. But the grantor said it's going to be a workforce development program. And we submitted the grant as Invisible Heritage, Identity, Memory in Our Town, which was based on Monica's curatorial work. And we ended up creating something called the Building Arts Institute, and began doing introduction to traditional woodworking. The first program was in July of 2017, and we were hosted by St. Paul's Church, a partnership where they allowed a nonprofit to use their space, and the young people were introduced to lithic woodworking, just basic traditional working. Was our first introduction and collaborative work with Edmund Felto, who you'll meet later, a woodworker, and rudely, 2 weeks after the end of the program, we were hit by Hurricane Irma. And we had identified a property, actually a half a block of properties, that we targeted for restoration. And post-Irma, everything was good. And then Maria came, and the church building lost its roof. Most of us had extensive personal damage, but those old derelict and abandoned houses were standing proudly, right? All 200 years worth of craft, just age. And in 2017 as well, we did, I guess I could show a picture of that property somehow. 2017, we did get an additional grant from the National Endowment for the Arts. I'm not going to do that. And so together we had $550,000 for 4 years of programming. And for programming, it's teachers. We compensated the students. So we do a learn and earn model apprenticeship program, we had 3 or 4 instructors over the course of the years, and then about 4 years now, 5 years? 5 years ago? We're going on 6 now. I was reintroduced to African Southwell, who became our lead trainer. So we do at least, or we try to do at least one 6 to 8 week workforce development training program with young people 18 to 30 in woodworking. And we also do a simultaneous open woodworking workshop for community members, which is usually in the evenings. And in 2020, when it was 22, the SHPO put out an application with the National Park Service. We applied for that project. We were told that we were awarded the funding, that we qualified for the funding. We got that notice in 2023, and then silence. Meanwhile, we're always looking for funding. And in late 2023, we received notification of availability of funding from the Federal Home Loan Bank of New York, and we were granted a $100,000 grant from them for this number 38 Hospital Street property, which we put in the bank because we knew that when the State Historic Preservation Office funding came through, it was a reimbursement grant. So, as an aside, the Department of Planning and Natural Resources, through the State Historic Preservation Office, fielded dozens of applications from all 3 historic towns, Saban, Charlotte-Amalie, St. Croix, both towns, 4 historic towns, and out of St. John. If my memory serves me correctly, there were over 80 qualified applicants. They had about $8 million. Maximum grant amount was $200,000 to $250,000. On June the 14th, a day I will never forget, in 2024, I received the award notice, which means your money's ready to go. And I signed the contract indicating that we would complete the project by August 31st of 2024, because September 30, the grant expired. Needless to say, my board chair was not happy that I signed. Fortunately, Mr. Southwell's training program had started late for all kinds of reasons, and he was just wrapping up a 6 to 8 week project with, we had 6, 7 young people. And we already had all the architectural drawings, we had the permits, we had all of that stuff. And now we had a commitment to the money from SHPO, and then they had to figure out how they were going to get that money to us, because it was supposed to be reimbursement. And we mobilized with that $100,000 from the Federal Home Loan Bank of New York. And then, everything worked together, and we finally were able to get the funding from the State Historic Preservation Office. So Mr. Southwell agreed to be my project manager and superintendent, whatever, GC, whatever. Because Mr. Lawrencine and O'Reilly Construction had too many houses to do. And Mr. Southwell and 6 young people began the work. and then it sort of attracted more people to work, and we were able to substantially complete the restoration of Building A uh, by September 30th of 2024. Everything fell into place, and when September 30th hit, and they said, oh, by the way, we've got an extension. We were like, phew, okay, it's almost done. So we were able to do building 1. So SHPO gave us, you can hit play for the, SHPO gave us $159,000. Federal Home Loan Bank of New York, we had $100,000. Oh, it needs all of that. And Building A got done. And then we got our money back, so we refunded Federal Home Loan Bank, and then we did this. Hold on a second. Miss, oh, she's. It's supposed to pick up with the, let's see if I can make it happen. I need glasses. We really would love you to hear it. Is this picking it up? Yes.
So the restoration project that we're
You're not hearing it. Hey.
is known as the Ghut Project, and it's an offshoot of
No.
the Visible Heritage
That's terrible.
Identity, Memory, and Our Town, a program that we started with funding.
Yeah, no, it's that it needs to get, it's not the computer. It's, I need it to pick up, I need the Bluetooth on this to pick up. And it's not. Where's volume? And why your mom just had to go. Zay, you know how to do this? You know how to switch it from this audio to that audio? No. Yeah, it should be. Right? See if it picks up the other speaker.
What's the speaker's name?
The speaker's name. I have no idea what the
Speaker's name?
Hold on. It's gonna have to be a new. What's that new device?
Bluetooth connected.
Ah, got it. Great.
Oh, good.
Yay!
So the restoration project that we're doing right now is known as the Ghut Project, and it's an offshoot of Invisible Heritage, Identity, Memory, and Our Town, a program that we started with funding from Art Place America and the National Endowment for the Arts in 2017. We have targeted a half a lot on Hospital Street for restoration. And
That's the before. That's the after.
Creating a training program to train young people in the lost of building arts, which is the woodworking skills that were used to construct these vernacular homes in Frederiksted and specifically in the area of Riga. We are right now collaborating with Jean-Paul Hughley, who is the founder of the American College of the Building Arts in Charleston, South Carolina. They were able to replicate the traditional long row that we are now rebuilding.
We were looking at historic buildings, looking at building techniques, particularly how timber frames went together, and Frandell and Gerard introduced us to some of the let's call it lighter frame timber framing that had happened here on the island, and it really impressed us. I think so many times today we sometimes forget the techniques that our forefathers have passed down literally for generations. And you know, the handmade, pegged together doesn't get done very much anymore, but we teach that at the American College of the Building Arts. We have local students from CHANT, and we have some of our graduates from American College working side by side and explaining those traditional techniques that sometimes get lost.
The young people are able to get a few things. One, there's the opportunity to learn and earn. So they are compensated for their time. They're learning safety, they're learning tool usage, construction methodology, they are learning architectural and engineering information because it all goes together. And at the end of the day, they're also learning discipline.
My name is Patrick Buha. I'm the site foreman and I'm assisting the timber framers. We're restoring basically the two houses that was here from the beginning, and we're fixing it. But instead of using like newer methods, we're trying to preserve the history. So we're using the older methods. We're not really using too much glue. We're holding the house together with pegs, like how it would have been done traditionally. It's awesome. I don't know what I would have been doing with my life, honestly, if I wasn't here. So it's a great help.
I'm going to say we've had 9 or 10 direct descendants of Clarence Michael Sr. on site, putting pegs into the walls with their names on it, with names of their mother or father who may no longer be in this realm, because they're all just super excited that this is happening, and his name is still attached to it.
I have 3 siblings that belong to Grandfather Mike. They are my older siblings. And I got to know Grandfather Mike from being their grandfather. And he adopted us, so he's also my grandfather. I'm so grateful. And to see this place restored, wow. It made me feel like 10 years younger, because it's like you watch around the town and you see everything falling apart. And when Miss Gerard said that she was going to restore this house, I was like, whoa, Grandfather, my house? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, what? And I keep passing and seeing it come back, come back, come back. And now it's almost finished, and I'm like, oh, this is like a dream come true.
It is about restoring Frederiksted building by building. It is showing to our community and our leaders that these so-called abandoned and derelict buildings can rise and become pieces of art standing in our community. And then for the young people, it's really about moving them on a trajectory that leads them to a brighter future that they help to define.
Does he run credits? So those are some of our funders. I guess we can turn that up. And you know, the yellow and white building was building A. That was the building that Mr. Southwell got done in 3-4 months. I mean, the finishing is another story, but we'll discuss that later. And then building V is the long row, which we now have fully sheathed. We're waiting to find out whether we can get another couple boxes of cedar shingles out of Canada, because all of that is happening. And then the roof is on. We had a temporary covering. The galvanized is on as of yesterday. It's done. because one of the funders is coming to inspect on Monday. And you know, it's all been out of what started off as, you know, this great creative placemaking idea and has resulted in, you know, tangible and human results. Now, we've done a little bit of we've done a lot of the work on the house, and the property itself has been in ownership by free blacks since 1777. You know, Frederiksted wasn't put on the map until 1753, so it's a very quick transition that there is a area designated for free black people to purchase property. That property was actually what is now 4 properties. It was like almost a quarter of the block, and then, as is typical in free communities, it got subdivided and subdivided and subdivided, so that other free black people would have access. Clarence Michael Senior, grandfather Mike, who passed away, I think, in the early 2000s, inherited the property from his parents. And his parents had purchased the property early 20th century. Clarence Michael's will gave it to all of his children. And then, before his death, he let everybody know she is supposed to have this house, one of his granddaughters, who is the person we've been working with. And we've crafted an agreement that meets the standards of the federal government, where CHANT is a lessee, and we have, you know, a 10-year renewal clause agreement with, and it has not yet been probated. So now it's to probate the property. Clearly, I'm not in a big hurry to spend a lot of money on probate costs, but we will have to do that because of the system we're in. But the reason, and I think, I'm gonna forget her name, the lady at the desk, and Ms. Ebbeson were talking about this heirs property. It isn't unique to African Americans and African Caribbean people. It is a very traditional African practice of family ownership of land. It is a very traditional old European practice of family ownership of land. What great-grandfather got passed down to the children and their children and their children. It was security. It was intergenerational wealth. It was stability. And everybody in the family knew this is family property. And then the systems changed, right? Where property is now this great asset that is in great demand by people who are trying to personalize wealth. And in communities where there are a lot of heirs property, there are a lot of outside investors. And all we have to do is take a look at what has transpired over the last 20, 30 years in the Virgin Islands to see the loss of heirs property to investors, and just think about what's happened in South Carolina, where one of the oldest African communities in North America has been squeezed out of their centuries of ownership of land because of heirs' property not being recognized by the state as legitimate. And because there's always somebody who will go with the investor and say, I want my money. So I think our challenge, and this is one of the things that we're going to be discussing with Senator James, is, is the problem, probate is a process, and it's a complex process, and the problems in probate are not the court. The problems with probate are the families meeting the requirements of the law. The court can't act until the families have done everything that's prescribed. And that's the difficult part. So how do we create the mechanism for families to do that? And then how do we preserve family ownership? So there was a woman, we grew up, we were little kids growing up, looking up at this magnificent woman. Her name was Miss Annie Deschabert. And I have to say, my sister just called me that Doc passed. So Dr. Ralph Deschabert has moved on. May he rest in peace. But Miss Annie was a businesswoman. She started off with a little shop on King Street in Christiansted. Her husband was a farmer and took advantage using, she was generating cash money, and he bought land up East End, and then he started buying up South Shore. And then in the 1960s, after he had died, this guy named Leon Hess needed some land, and Miss Annie cut the deal for him to buy the land. And Miss Annie Deschabert was the first black female developer of a shopping mall in the United States of America. But she didn't do it in her name. She established a family corporation. A corporate entity, a legal entity that owned the land and assets, and her children were partners in the corporation. And that worked for many, many, many years. So are there corporate structures that families can use? Are there family corporations that can be created so that a house and property like number 38 Hospital Street will in perpetuity be owned by the family? Because I don't know a single family that has inherited a property that can have over $300,000 in on about 1,000 square feet of usable space, and there's still no bathroom and no kitchen, no electricity and no plumbing. So that means there's another 150 at least to go. But that's the kind of investment these properties require. It's much cheaper to knock them down and put up something new, but the value learned by our students, our community, that we've been able to share, we think is worth the investment. So I guess that's my mini thing. And thank you, Mr. Southwell. I keep pointing at him. He's sitting back there. Y'all will meet him later. Any questions? Yes.
I have a question, Frandell. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I know that historical restoration, no matter where it takes place, is very expensive. Finding, as you said, the skilled craftsmen and craftswomen to do the work, supplies, all of that makes it even more expensive here in St. Louis. It's my understanding that a lot of Frederiksted is included in a historical preservation district, which
all of Frederiksted, all of downtown Frederiksted,
which restricts the kind of rehabilitation that can be done on these buildings. So I wanted
So, thanks for the question. Um, down, downtown, almost all of Frederiksted town, up to Marley, and the post office. I think they tried to extend it a little bit, but that was for the economic empowerment zone. So for the historic district, it's the 7x7 streets. And all of downtown Christiansted is historic. And we're on the Federal Registry. And I've been doing historic restoration with different people for 30 years. I have never had a problem with the board, ever. We did a building when I was the chair of the St. Croix Foundation that's on the corner of King and Market Street. It's the corner building with the rounded edge next to the St. Croix Foundation's office. And I said, because I had learned from Dr. DeChabert in my insurance world, I said to the board, we want to go full concrete block, because it was a rebuild. It couldn't be repaired. It had burned and damaged. And I said, we want to do concrete block, both floors. Because from an insurance perspective, foundation couldn't afford wood. And they were like, no, that's not going to work. I said, there's a building where it's already been done. And so further down in town on Company Street, back in the 80s, Dr. DeChabert had rebuilt a building on the corner of, I'm going to get it wrong, Queen Cross and Company, the blue building, across from Hamilton, the restaurant now. And it looks like a wood sheath house upstairs. But it's a concrete block, reinforced block construction inside. And that's what we did at the foundation. So that corner building that you see that looks very traditional, which it is, same design, same profile, different methodology. So that's applicable. We talk about cost. All construction costs have gone crazy. There are contractors working with our VI Housing Authority and VI Housing Finance Authority who are doing restorations of housing communities, getting $1 million an apartment. Let's do that math. Let's look at the cost associated with the construction of schools. The math isn't mathing, right? The costs are crazy. We were able to do, if you really pulled back our costs for the front house, we're really talking, we kept it at about $300 a square foot, which is low for today's costs here, right? But imagine, close your eyes, and imagine St. Croix, St. Thomas, St. John, with skyscrapers on the waterfront, with concrete and glass. Whose vision is that? So preservation and conservation, I think, have to go hand in hand. And the argument that we are preserving colonial relics, right? That these are the work of the enslavers and the colonizers. When you peel back all of the plaster and you look carefully, the fingerprints belong to little black boys and girls and black tradespeople. Every piece of wood was cut by a black tradesperson. None of these buildings were built by Europeans. None of them. They didn't have that, there's this mentality that, they brought in craftsmen to teach the enslaved. No, they picked who they enslaved based on where they came from and their skill sets. The metal workers, the wood workers, the rice growers, people were selected based on their advanced knowledge from their communities in Africa that the Europeans needed on this side, right? Because the Europeans were thousands of years behind of our African cultures. Thousands. So we just need to shift that. And, we have a project we did with Levon Bell that's now resulted in a major exhibit called The Houses That Freedom's Built. Her work, but she did a workshop with our young people to build lattice work. And one of the young men that worked with, he started in 2017. He dragged Felto in, Jamal, was like, I don't know why we need to do what his slave master wanted. Why do we have to perpetuate this? And when you go upstairs, you'll see on the wall the work, and you'll see a piece of lattice work, which we've now replicated and using at the house on Hospital Street, where he rethinks what gingerbread should be. And he's put an ankh in it. And historic preservation does not have a problem with it, because, it's a reinterpretation of an Elizabethan era, or Victorian era, sorry, piece of work. So I think it's retelling the narrative. And the block that we're on, just like you had 4 aunties that owned a property in the 1950s. Imagine in 1820, I think it was, or 1830, that block on Hospital Street was anchored by 5 property holding free women born in Africa. That predates, so that's the story. And their houses still stand. I know I went on a tangent. Anybody else?
Where is that house?
The houses from the house that is now our town Fredericksted's property, all the way. So that property, the one property across the street by St. Paul's, they knocked it down. The property on the corner of Hospital and King Cross, that's now the Brow property. That property was free black, and these women's names are attached. We got the whole listing. So we'll be telling that story in that building. Yeah.
How about the adjacent houses next to the one
That's done?
that's done?
So the one to the south is owned by a brother and sister, and one of the young men that actually was in our program. And he's restored the smaller house on his own. We've helped him apply for a grant, he and his sister, for the house that's adjoining. And unfortunately, we haven't heard back. The property to the south, we've been in talks with the owner, but there are some legal obstacles that hurdles that we have to assist them in creating a trust. It's clear title, but they have to create a family trust for a lot of reasons. And then the other 2 properties, I haven't pursued the owner as aggressively, but I know who she is. She wanted to sell. I talked her out of selling. Then one of the properties was burned down. So she might not like me anymore, but the likelihood is, that she'd be willing for us to take over. We just have to identify the long-term funding. And all of the applications that have gone in for community development and work under the recovery grants have been denied. They're not there yet. Yeah. Because imagine $25 million in the hand, you could go tell I say it because I told her to say it, in the hands of the St. Croix Foundation for the town of Christiansted. Imagine $25 million in my hand for the town of Frederiksted, with the help of the St. Croix Foundation. We'd get it done. We don't have the obstacles that government has, right? We're more flexible and know the law and have the relationships. You know, I'd love to go into the State Historic Preservation Office with 5 applications for one block because it would make their lives easier. So yeah, it's just money. Yes.
What about the SHPO programs where individual owners put money into restoration and then they take it off their tax form?
Yeah.
That is not a popular program.
It's not okay, so you're talking about the historic tax credit?
Yes.
Okay, so it's a federal tax credit?
Yes.
And then it's reciprocated here, and you can get property tax credit as well. It's a long-winded process. It's through the EDA. The federal tax credit is the easiest to get, believe it or not. But, you know, they've got the forms, you fill it out, it's certified by the State Historic Preservation Office, and you get your historic tax credit over time. So there are a lot, I mean, people don't use it because a lot of times by the time people are doing restoration, they don't need a tax credit. They're either on a fixed income, they're getting grant money, or they're in a tax bracket that, you know, all the other tax credits they're getting. But it's a long-winded process to get I know the EDA has a tax credit program, and that's a bit long-winded. But yeah, they're there. They're tax credit programs.
I think that's what we spoke about, property management.
Yeah.
And property management, not from a perspective of selling your property, but having that conversation so individuals know who you can go to. You can speak to CHANT, you can speak to St. Croix Foundation, and their focus is to have you, how do you retain ownership of your property. I think that's where a lot of individuals, with the applications you talk about, that application process showed after the disaster funding that folks want to fix their property. How to get there is where the task is. I think that is the central point that doesn't exist. If I have an old derelict building, and yes, we have multiple owners, we have years issues, who can I go and speak to tell me this is how you kind of wade through what's in front of you? That is what doesn't exist. And so the easiest option is then just sell it.
Yeah.
You know, convince everyone.
But what does
have individuals that, for example, that you may be offered, and this is a real situation. I had a discussion with someone. And so you're offered out of this sale, $125,000. Okay, fine, that sounds like a lot of money. But the reality is what's your monthly budget? What is your annual budget for your household? Divide that into the $125,000 and see how long it lasts. Doesn't last you. But it's sort of like it's a glass half full or half empty. And I think that even going through this process, that's what's difficult. If you don't have the tenacity, if you just you know what you want to get done, how do I get there? And these conversations, for us establishing a point where individuals can say, go and speak to Frandell. This is what I have, this is where you need to be, this is where you want to go. You don't have to get rid of your property. It's not going to be quick and overnight, but understanding a lot of the programs and where the options are, and applications that come out.
Yeah.
You apply.
You apply.
Just apply. Whether you don't sit back and think, I'm not going to get that. You may just might.
Yeah.
And so us as an entity and a community getting together and saying, listen, here's 80 people who want to fix their property. What programs? We kind of have to flip the script and put the pressure on.
Well, I've said to the Commissioner of Department of Planning and Natural Resources, they were only able to fund 20 restorations territory-wide. And I said to him, and to Sean, for the head of the State Historic Preservation Office, You have qualified, vetted properties, number one. To get approved, they had to have plans. So the plans are in place. And they have budgets. They've got everything. Go ask for some money. Right? Ask for your program to be funded. And they had the inspectors, and they had the staff, and they had all of that. Go get some more money out of this pot of recovery money. It made sense to me. I don't think it's happened. But, it made sense to me that you could all of a sudden do 60 more properties. And imagine, let's assume, 30 on St. Thomas, 20 in or 15 in Frederiksted, 15 in Christiansted. What an impact that would have on our view what we see in our towns. Yes, ma'am.
Well, what role does the Office of Disaster and Recovery play?
I'm not really sure. I'm going to be honest. I'm not really sure. I know that they have now assumed management responsibility for the disbursement of the funds that have come from HUD to our VI Housing Finance Authority. And I understand now that our Public Finance Authority is involved in the management of the money. That's all. I know that. And yeah.
Their dollars, I do believe, their role is really dealing with, not from a preservation perspective.
No.
Their role is managing dollars, disaster dollars that have come for specific projects. But for preservation and historical preservation, that still lies with the people.
Yeah. And that's are you still,
If you want me to, I'm gonna get over to stop it later.
yeah, stop it for a minute. Just because I have a habit of saying stuff that gets me in trouble, and I'm getting federal money and, local money and all of that stuff. But the disaster recovery money came in two tranches. There was a community disaster recovery money, and then there's the MIT, the mitigation money. We're talking about billions of dollars with a B. 2.3, something like that, 2.6, 2.7. It's stupid money. In each one of those awards of funding, from the federal government to at the time it was the Virgin Highlands Housing Finance Authority as their partner group. Within the first, don't hold me to this, but I want to say it's like on page 6, 7, or 8 of, how the money can be used. It says community economic development and revitalization. It says it. It's right there. But our government officials have not felt that that was an appropriate use of funds. Well, what is our policy regarding the revitalization of our towns? If we step back and look at our officials, there's no policy that I'm aware of. You've got State Historic Preservation, they have a certain function, right? You got the governor saying that it would be best if we would allow outside investors to come in and start fixing these properties and putting liens. Oh, but by the way, the local families aren't going to lose it, but the liens will be there, and that was his derelict and whatever bill, right? You have legislators suggesting that historic buildings should be allowed to be bulldozed and families should be allowed to do whatever they want. There is no policy. There is no
vision, no students.
There is no, yeah, cohesive policy. And the community groups that are working on rehab are working on preservation, are working on conservation, although we're little, we're teeny tiny, and then have to be careful, like turning off stuff, because, because no, we don't want to be told that our funding is no longer there. Yeah, yeah, no, we can't tell them that. So does that? Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
I'm going back to Ms. Fludd, right? And Mayor Frandell, talking about the many stages in the process of getting funding and all of that for historical restoration, right? And the need to create some centralized knowledge base where individual property owners can avail themselves of the information they need to apply for all these various grants to understand all the different agencies and who does what and when. Who do you think is responsible, individual or agency? Who do you think is responsible for creating that entity that can guide a property owner from A to Z as far as preservation and
Thank you.
restoration are
To
concerned?
Appreciate it.
answer that, the way things are functioning now, I think we have to. It has to come from the outside in, and it's not coming from the inside out. And I'm talking about
Community
groups,
organizing. Yeah.
organizing and having the communities. These are all of the properties, and these are the challenges that we've met.
Yeah.
And put the concept, it's almost like a town hall meeting. And saying, this is our focus, preservation is our focus, conservation is our focus. These are the individuals, here are 80 faces who said, I want to fix my property. It's almost like you have to put the pressure from the outside in. Because we're the faces.
Yeah.
We're the faces, we're the individuals. We have to not, and what you see it sometimes on faces where individuals like, I'm not just gonna apply to say or no.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna waste the time. But you come in with your project and you say, this is what I'm trying to do, how can you help me? If you can't help me, then who do I go to?
Right. Well, here's what happened with the state historic preservation funding. It was National Park Service money, and I got involved for a lot of reasons, but the I just said it. The enterprise zone program with the EDA, Nadine Marchena Ken, was responsible for getting 20, 30 applications done in St. Thomas because she stood up her staff, they called in people, they did it. They weren't as effective here in assisting, but they got a few. They helped. So there is a governmental entity that used their resources, partnered with SHPO, and that's driven by Nadine's commitment to the historic preservation of the towns. Her personal commitment, made her say, okay, this is part of our job, we're gonna go get this done. So that's why there were so many applications. I think they got like 20 of them here on St. Croix, something like that. Don't quote me on the number. But our people have lost trust. They've lost